OAW patron, Double O Soldier. Salute to you, fam. And if you have a request for a film or television series that you would like to see reviewed right here on OAW Entertainment, become a patron at patreon.com/OAW. There are only 2 spots left available for the month of June, so get them while you can. And with that being said, this is my review of Isle of Dogs. Let's get it started.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Greetings to everyone watching live and everyone watching after the fact. Shout out to the faithful and salute to the patrons. This is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all another film review for this week. This week, as I mentioned before, another shout out to OAW patron, Double O Soldier, for requesting this film. So I'm going to give you all brief synopsis, rundown of the film, then I'll share my thoughts accordingly. And if we have time tonight, I'll answer a couple of questions so long as they pertain to the film. But keep in mind, any question or comment that's sent via Super Chat will be answered right here on air. All right. So for those of you all watching, if you would like to read along in the description box, by all means, feel free. Time for a little read along, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's get into it. So this is my review of the 2018 stop motion animated science fiction comedy drama film Isle of Dogs, written, produced, and directed by Wes Anderson, with story credits from Roman Coppola, Jason Schwartzman, and Kunichi Nomura. The film's ensemble voice cast includes Bryan Cranston, Koyu Rankin, Edward Norton, Liev Schreiber, Bill Murray, Bob. Oh, hang on. Got hung up on a name now. Balaban? Bob Balaban? Jeff Goldblum, Scarlett Johansson, Kunichi Nomura, Tilda Swinton, Ken Watanabe, Akira Ito, Greta Gerwig, Akira Takayama, Francis McDormand, F. Murray and Abraham, Courtney B. Vance as the narrator, Yojiro Noda, Fisher Stevens, Amari Natsuki, Nijiro Murakami, Yoko Ono, Harvey Keitel, and Frank Wood. Yeah, big ensemble cast for this film. Okay, and brief synopsis of Isle of Dogs. Set in a dystopian near future Japan, the story follows a pack of banished dogs led by street dog Chief. For the record, Chief is not the leader. Chief says even himself, we do not have a leader. We are our own leaders. And I put it to a vote that Chief is not the leader. All those in favor of Chief not being the leader say aye. That is a direct quote from the film. It's actually a running gag throughout the film. Anywho, back to the synopsis. So, set in a dystopian near future Japan, the story follows a pack of banished dogs led by street dog Chief, who helps a young boy named Atari search for his own dog after the species is banished to an island following the outbreak of a canine flu. So, very brief synopsis of Isle of Dogs. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what the setup is and then get into my thoughts on the film. All right. So, okay. So yeah, as the synopsis suggests, this takes place, it's sort of like in an alternate near future, right? It's sort of like in an alternate near future. And essentially what has happened is, yeah, there has been what has been coined as the canine flu outbroke in Japan, specifically in Megasaki City, which is part of the what is it? Is it Uni prefecture? But it's only in one part of Japan. However, the mayor of Nagasaki City has taken it. He's pretty much issued this like executive order to essentially banish all the dogs, whether they're domesticated or stray, right? Whether they're owned or stray, all dogs are banished to what is essentially their trash heap because they have a separate island off the coast where they dump all their trash. And so that's where they place the dogs. So the story picks up 6 months after that decree, where Atari, who we learn is actually the distant nephew and he's the legal ward of the mayor, he goes to the Isle of Dogs to search for his dog, who was actually his um, bodyguard. It was a bodyguard dog, it was a guard dog named Spots. And he pretty much goes to the Isle of Dogs looking for Spots. And that's where the story pretty much ensues from that point. A group of dogs, the team that you see depicted right here in the picture. Actually, one of the dogs is missing from this picture. So, okay, let me just point them out if I can real quick. So, black one's Chief, one next to him that is King. Atari's in the middle. Then there's Boss. Then there's Rex, who is actually the real leader. Technically speaking, Rex is kind of the leader of the pack. The only one that's not on here is Duke, voiced by Jeff Goldblum, because he was cut off in this picture. He's actually on the other side of Rex. Anywho, so yeah, so they happen upon Atari when his plane crashes on the Isle, and of course they end up, figuring out what it is, his purpose for being there, and they decide to help him on his journey to find Spots. They protect him throughout, and pretty much the whole story kind of leads into this. Throughout the story, like, we learn the history of like how the Isle of Dogs came to be, what's happened to the dogs since they've been banished there. But then also we learn about all of the, let's just call it what it is, political maneuvers that sent the dogs to the Isle in the first place. Cause yeah, this behind the surface of just a boy, and being protected by a pack of dogs, yeah, there is some political intrigue, some conspiracy theory at work, a whole bunch of political machinations that are at play throughout the course of this story. And it pretty much culminates in this big showdown with Atari and his uncle, who's the mayor of Megasaki City, over the whole, decree. Eventually, there is a showdown, and it's actually a pretty cool one. Pretty cool one. All right, so that's as much of a synopsis as I can give you all without going ahead into full blown spoilers. I'm not going to go into spoilers tonight, just because this was a pretty cool movie. This is a pretty cool movie. It was kind of a treat. Once again, this is Wes Anderson. This is his another go at stop motion animation. For those of you all who have seen my Fantastic Mr. Fox review, Wes Anderson was also the director and co-writer of that. Same studio house, same animation house that did Fantastic Mr. Fox did this one as well. So throughout the course of this review, I may go back to that, kind of compare and contrast the movie with Fantastic Mr. Fox. But yeah, I'll start the review by saying this. I think if you are a fan of Fantastic Mr. Fox, you will enjoy this movie as well. But I do have to go ahead and just throw this out here. Preface this by saying this. When I reviewed Fantastic Mr. Fox, I said the cool thing about that film was that it was as much as an adult film as it was a children's film, right? Because there was enough there for both audiences, right? So yeah, it's like Fantastic Mr. Fox was intended for kids, but there was enough material there and enough content there that adults could appreciate as well, right? I could make the same argument here, but I'm going to say this. If you have young children, I might not necessarily let them watch this. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about that in the story portion. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's talk about the story. Story's good. Story's solid. Really good. Really good. I did not think it would get as deep as it actually did. Like I said, there's a lot of political intrigue throughout the film, and I didn't think, like, I expected this film to kind of be like Homeward Bound. You know what I'm saying? Or something like maybe All Dogs Go to Heaven, where it's like, oh, it's the group of dogs and they come across this kid, and they sort of have to take care of him. And there's a lot when you get introduced to Atari's uncle, who's the mayor of Nagasaki City, and then you get introduced to all the characters that work for him, and then when you get introduced to the scientist and his group who are trying to cure the canine flu, and you see what happens with them, and then you see what happens with like the press and the anti-dog propaganda and all that jazz, like the story gets deep. But like I said, it's still solid. It's still solid. And I dug it. I dug it. I also like the the character relationships. I think are pretty cool. Even with Atari and his uncle, even that I think was interesting enough. But yeah, the relationship work is pretty good here too. Um, but I'll get into more detail with the characters in the character portion of the review. All right. So let's see. What else? Let's talk about. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the plot here in a second. Um, plot wise, plot wise, plot wise, the film is solid too. I didn't really find any holes. Didn't really find anything that didn't make sense. All of the like twist and reveals when they happen and then they're explained, like everything sort of holds up for the most part. I tell you what, let me go ahead and let me get back to my statement that I said originally about why I wouldn't necessarily let young children watch this film. It's because of the severity of the conflict. So like I said, with Fantastic Mr. Fox, that is still very much a kid's film. And at no point in time during watching Fantastic Mr. Fox did I ever think, even when the stakes got really high and like the danger level got really high for the characters, I never thought the characters were in legitimate like threat. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's just me. It's like, no, this is a kid's film. They're not going to kill these characters. Okay. Isle of Dogs doesn't really have that. What I mean by that is when the danger level in this film takes place, it's pretty severe. And there is no guarantee, like no character is necessarily safe in this film. Now, that's not to say that a bunch of characters get killed or anything like that. I'm not going to spoil that. I'm not going to tell y'all who lives and who dies. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is the way in which it's presented in the film, the way the film is written, any one of them could go. And they kind of make that clear early in the movie that it is real. It's real. Um, yeah, and there's some really close calls with some of the characters in this film. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'm not going to tell you who it is. But what I will say is this: if you have little kids, I'm talking about like 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds, right? Especially if they like animals. Woo, this might be a little rough for them. This might be a little rough for them. I don't know if they'll be able to make it to the end of the movie, but so just keep that in mind. There isn't. I won't go as far as to say like like there isn't like animal. Well, shit. You know what? There's not animal cruelty and there's not animal violence depicted in the film, but you do see the aftermath of those acts in the film, right? So, like I said, even though it's animated, even though it's stop motion animation, it's just puppets now. Kids, they're smart enough to know what's going on, and yeah, they might take it a little too much to heart. So just bear that in mind if you're trying to show this to a toddler. Keep that in mind. All right. So now let's talk about some characters, shall we? Okay. So it probably goes without saying because I kind of gave it away in the synopsis. Chief is the big character of the film, I guess you could say, because he's the one that has a definite beginning, middle, and end character arc. And his arc is sort of it sort of parallels Atari's arc. Um, so Chief is a character because Chief is the stray dog. He's the black one depicted right here. Oh, and that's a funny little note for the film as well. You find out what's up with that. But Chief is pretty much like he's our main character. I mean, Atari is the protagonist, but I could argue Chief is like the main character, right? He's sort of the lead dog. And like I said, his is the one whose character arc sort of is like the main theme of the film, because throughout the film the human characters are told, all of these unflattering things about dogs. Oh, these dogs, they were the cause of this virus. They can't be trusted, this that and the other. And what's funny is Chief is a traditional stray dog, so in many respects he embodies a lot of the stereotypes of stray dogs. What's interesting about Chief, though, is Chief never complains about being a stray. And actually, to him, it's a badge of honor, But it's interesting that Chief's perspective on his circumstances come from come from an internal place instead of an external place. So essentially, like Chief is not he never depicts himself as a product of his environment. Never. Because Chief's like excuse is always that I bite. That's always his thing, especially when we find out, there's a scene where Chief reveals to us, I wasn't always a stray. And that story ends with I bite. And a lot of his stories end with I bite, right? So you have this interesting thing with Chief's character where essentially it's like his circumstances are the way they are because of his nature. So in that regard, he sort of has like this predestination thing about him where he thinks that he is where he is because that was just his lot in life. And his nature is representative of that. It's not necessarily cause and effect with him. He's not really concerned with that. It's like, hey man, this is just my life. It is what it is, and this is just what it is. You know what I mean? Until he gets his opportunity for change, and that's where we start to see him on the journey to complete his arc, because that's essentially what he's doing as he's accompanying and protecting Atari throughout the film. He's completing that arc, and it's very interesting when he gets that opportunity for change, what he does with it, and what happens between him and the other dogs, between him and Atari, and how their relationship is sort of representative of what Atari's cause is in the film as well. Because Atari is another character that I'm going to talk about where um, Atari is very simple but very righteous, because of course he's against the banishing of the dogs, and he only wants his dog and things like that. But what's interesting is, especially between him and Chief, right? Because they each embody the opposite of the stereotype that the other has for them. So for an example, um Atari represents that unconditional love that an owner has for their dog that Chief has never seen before. He has no frame of reference for it, right? And Atari embodies that, right? Where on the other side, for for Atari, Chief is as good a dog as his dog Spots was. And once again, Chief isn't used to that. He's like, dude, you don't know me. I bite. And Atari's like, no, good dog. So, and like I said, they're kind of analogous for the two sides in the film itself, because you have the government saying all of these things about dogs, right? Like, oh, these filthy animals, this is that and the other. And Chief at the start of the film would have been the perfect candidate for that, right? Because he checks off all the boxes on the stereotype list, right? But then the counter argument are the people like Atari, where they're like, no, no, those are good animals. Y'all just giving them a bad rep because y'all have it out for them. Nah. And that faith in those animals is restored. Well, actually, I'm not going to say restored, because Okay, with some of the detractors, it is restored. For the people who were supporting the dogs in the first place, it's rewarded, right? So, but like I said, trying not to give too much away. But those two characters specifically, Chief and Atari, like their story, yeah, it's really good. Their little arc is really good. So let me see other characters. Okay, so we have the rest of the dog crew, right? The one big criticism I have about the film, it's the only real, like, legit criticism I have about the film. And you guys are going to have to take this with a grain of salt because I understand why it is the way it is. Rex and the rest of the boys get taken out for a considerable amount of time in the film, where essentially, minor spoiler, essentially the group gets separated, where it's just Chief and Atari, and then it's the rest of the dogs. They get separated for a while. So the reason why it's a complaint of mine is because I'm like, man, I really wanted more screen time with the rest of the crew. But what happens with Chief and Atari had to happen with them together and by themselves. It's sort of like because they almost kind of go on a like a vision quest almost, right? They kind of have like this little, like journey of discovery sort of bit that would not have been possible if the rest of the crew was there. It would have been mitigated. It would have been interrupted. So I'm like, okay, like I get why they separated, but I kind of wish they hadn't, because the rest of the crew is hilarious. I mean, they're hilarious. I love them. I love them. Okay, let's see other characters. Atari's uncle, the mayor, once again, kind of like a stereotypical antagonist, stereotypical bad guy. But what's interesting is, and like I said, y'all just have to wait and see what happens with him when he's introduced with an opportunity for change. I think is very interesting. And I think it serves the story really well when you take in consideration his relationship with Atari, right? Where that goes, I think is pretty good. And like I said, like at that point, that's when danger levels are at an all-time high. When Atari and his uncle are like face to face, and uncle has an opportunity. It's like, look, man, like we can turn the tide right now. I won't tell y'all what he did, but yeah, it's pretty tense. It's pretty tense. It's pretty tense. So since I'm talking about the characters, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to mention the voice cast right now. Everybody's stellar. Everyone's stellar in this. They're all good. They're all good. I did, I found it interesting that I did find it interesting how they decided to depict the human characters and the animal characters in this film, because we have all these cliches about animated films with talking animals and stuff like that, right? But the way in which the film depicts it, which is kind of cool. So because the story takes place in Japan, all the human characters are Japanese, with the exception of one character, an exchange student who's from the US, right? All the rest of the characters are Japanese, right? But they only speak Japanese. They only speak Japanese, whereas the dogs are the only ones who speak English in the film. And what's surprising is there are no subtitles for the Japanese speaking humans in the film. Their dialogue is given to us through through some type of translator, whether it's another person who's directly translating, right? Like in person in the room, or if it's done like through a newspaper or through the radio or through a television broadcast, like through a reporter, right? But yeah, that was just I found that an interesting decision. That was an interesting creative decision. That the humans would only speak Japanese and that the dogs are the ones speaking English. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, that's because there is that like language barrier. I mean, let's be real about this. Anybody who owns animals, y'all know. I mean, because animals don't understand English, so there's always that language barrier, right? Because animals, for the most part, they just respond to familiar sound, but they don't actually understand the English language. So, but there is a gag about that whole language barrier in the film, and it does turn out to be an important plot point later on. Because that language gap does get bridged eventually. So yeah. Okay, let's see. What else did I want to talk about? Let's talk about the animation. Animation is good. Once again, like I said, the same studio that produced Fantastic Mr. Fox, they're right on board right here again. They do a really good job. Stop motion is really good. Um, so yeah, that's good. I'm going to talk about the music real quick. Real quick. I'm going to talk about the music. I love the scores in this film, especially the opening score. The opening score with them damn. If you guys might have seen, if y'all seen some of my other videos, I've brought it up in previous videos. When I've been talking about like anime scores or anything like that. I'm a sucker for them Japanese drums, bruh. I really am. I'm a sucker for them. And yeah, the opening score is heavy on the drums, dude. I really like the opening score. I also like the little, once again, reduce the whistling thing, right? Fantastic Mr. Fox had a whole thing about a whistle, right? There's a whistle in this one too. The little folk song that we do with the little whistle. That's pretty cool too. I like that. And it is a tool that is used. Remember what I just mentioned about how the human characters and the dog characters speak two different languages and they bridge that gap? That whistle song is one of the tools used in that, which is a really cool scene the first time it happens. Um, Minor spoiler again. Essentially, it's a scene where Atari whistles. He's whistling to call Chief, but he whistles in that tune and Chief recognizes that tune and he responds with the tune and then they start whistling together as if like they're singing. um Really cool scene. It's a really cool scene, but it comes up later in the film too. Really, really cool scene. All right, so i think for the most part um I'm pretty much done. Yeah, final thoughts. Good film. It's a good film. I don't know if I can go as far as to say it's better than Fantastic Mr. Fox, just because I don't know. That might at that point that might be more of a taste issue. I thought Fantastic Mr. Fox was more comedic. That's not to say that this film isn't comedic because it is hilarious, but and it has like it's the same type of humor. It's the same flavor of humor, right down to the punchline deliveries, like the cadence of speech and how some of the dialogue plays out in a lot of the scenes is very similar to Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's that same type of cadence, um, that same type of like quick wit humor, which is really good. But like I said, story wise, this one is a lot more serious in tone, whereas Fantastic Mr. Fox is more whimsical in that regard. So, but I still think it's a really good movie. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 4 stars. You know, yeah, 3.5 out of 4, like a B plus, borderline A minus. It's good. It's good. I highly recommend it. Check it out. Um, I'm not sure what streaming service has it right now, if any. I borrowed the Blu-ray, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I would love to hear you guys if you guys have seen it. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts in the comments. Please feel free, share those now. Um, and if you haven't, highly recommend it. Like I said, if you like Fantastic Mr. Fox, you will like this. Which one you will like better? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure in that regard. All right, so yeah, we're just under 30 minutes. Let me see real quick. Real quick, I am Okay, wow. Not many questions in the comments. Double O Soldier is in the building though. Yes, sir. Review time. Review time. I hope you like it. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, so yeah, not many questions tonight. So that's no prob. That's no problem. We'll move on. I did see, I tell you what though. See, I said I wasn't going to do it unless it was related to the film tonight, but I tell you what, I'll break my rule this one time because this is sort of an important question. Or at least it's important to me. My man Dijon Patterson Power says, off topic, what is the best Studio Ghibli film to see? I guess to show to my 4.5-year-old half niece, My Neighbor Totoro. My Neighbor Totoro and Ponyo. Though I bought both of those for my niece when she was I think she was 2 at the time. I think she had just turned 2. And I got her both those. And my homeboy B Rizzle, shout out to him. I don't know if he's watching, but his dad just bought his niece. Well, I'm sorry. His dad bought his niece, so his dad's granddaughter. Totoro, Spirited Away, and I think Ponyo was the 3. Oh no, I'm sorry. No, he did. It was Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, and I think Ponyo were the 3 they got. I say Totoro and Ponyo. I'm sorry, Kiki's Delivery Service is just kind of boring to me. Yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service is boring to me. Sorry, it just is. Ariadne is a good one. Not sure they would appreciate it as much at that age though. Because Ariadne does talk about some more, I guess you could say, more serious stuff. Ariadne, I would recommend for like a 7 or an 8-year-old, like a second grader, third grader, like mid-grade school. But for a toddler, Totoro and Ponyo, those 2. Double O Soldier asks, how many times did you watch it for the review? Just once. I only watched it once. But I watched it last night, so it's like still fresh in my brain. Just watched it last night. All right, so that is going to wrap up this week's review. Once again, I want to thank everyone for joining me live. Thanks everyone for watching after the fact. As always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Much appreciated. Follow me on social media, facebook.com/OAW Entertainment, twitter.com/OAWENTMT, and twitch.tv/OAW_entertainment. And last but certainly not least, you can find me here at youtube.com/OAW Entertainment. Let's see. And yeah, I forgot about the Patreon. Yeah. And last but certainly not least, once again, if you have a request for a film or TV review that you would like to see reviewed here live on OAW Entertainment, become a patron at patreon.com/OAW. There are only 2 spots left for that tier. I am leaving those spots open because I am in the process of scheduling out June slate, but I will be perfectly honest with you all. June is already booked. June is pretty much booked, but I will make the exception for the last 2 spots of the Patreon for that tier. So just keep that in mind, just throwing it out there. Of course, I am still, like I said, I'm still accepting requests via Patreon. I'm still accepting requests via Cash App and PayPal. Those are in the description box below. I just got a Cash App request like 2 hours ago. I'm still accepting those. It's just that with those, I can't guarantee those any earlier than July because June is already so booked. The only ones I'm guaranteeing for June are the Patreon ones. Because the slate is just full up with all the other ones from the Super Chat sweepstakes, from, the winners of the Jeopardy game and all that stuff. Like all of those have kind of filled up June. So I only got 2 spots left in June, and those are being reserved for Patreon. But any requests that I get afterwards, like I mean, as essentially at this point, the requests I'm accepting are for July. I'm pretty much at that point. Accepting requests for July, and those I pretty much put on the slate in as I receive them. So if you want to make sure that you definitely get a request in for July, yeah, by all means, become a patron. Hit up the hit up the Cash App, hit up the PayPal. You do that now, I will guarantee you a spot in July. Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. It's a good problem to have, though, man. It's a good problem to have because a lot of really good reviews coming to you all in June. Y'all gonna love June. I promise you that. Y'all gonna love June. All right, so time for me to get out of here, folks. With that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I am signing off. And until next time, peace.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?